Okay, welcome everybody. I really appreciate your attending today's webinar. This is the first of us. My name is Virginia Pierce and I work at the South Carolina State Library. First of all, I want to tell you who I am and really appreciate y'all's participation today. We are doing a 6-part series from May to October this year, and it's going to be about African American genealogy. And I know some of you are in South Carolina and some of you may be in other parts of the country, and we're glad to have you. If you ever need help, at the end, I'm going to show you how to get in touch with me and my reference staff here at the State Library, and we're glad to get you started. We do obituaries, we have county family histories and published works that we can help you with. And then when we've reached our limits, we would like to direct you to other archives, libraries, and other good people around the state that might be able to help you. So just consider us one of the resources that you might be able to use. And I'd love to introduce Dr. Walter Curry Jr., who's going to be our speaker today. His talk is Writing Your Family History, the Narrative Inquiry Approach, and he's going to describe that in just a moment. Dr. Curry is an educator. He's a publisher, an author, and a genealogist, among other things. And the more I learn about you, I know you've got other things that you have going on in your life.
Right.
He's published 2 works so far, and they've received awards. The first was The Thompson Family, Untold Stories from the Past from 1830 to 1960. He published this work in 2018. And it was awarded the 2019 International African American Historical and Genealogy Society Book Award, and it was in nonfiction. This work included some really great stories and of African Americans from the Skillet community of Sally, South Carolina. Is that Aiken County?
Yes, Aiken County, that's correct.
Thank you. And there's so many interesting stories in this book. One was an enslaved ancestor who was able to purchase his freedom before the Civil War, and another female ancestor who served as a cook in the Confederate Army. And one of the talks she gave, she applied for a pension just like the soldiers did many years later because of her service. His second book is titled The Awakening, the C. Wright Ellison Family Saga, Volume 1, A Narrative History. It's the first volume about descendants of Martha Kitchings C. Wright Ellison, and he'll tell us more about that work. Dr. Curry's received many accolades and awards over the years. I thought this was really exciting that the South Carolina General Assembly recognized you for your significant work and service to African American history and heritage in South Carolina. So thank you for all that you're doing to promote South Carolina genealogy, African American genealogy, and our heritage. And without further ado, I'm turning it over to Dr. Curry. Thank you for speaking today.
Thank you, Virginia. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here this afternoon. This is the inaugural African American genealogy virtual webinar series sponsored by the South Carolina State Library and my company, Renaissance Publications, LLC. And the motto of my company is to revive historical scholarship through ancestry, to teach African American history through ancestry. And when I talk about my ancestry, I'm talking about my family history. And so the topic for today's webinar is Writing Your Family History, the Narrative Inquiry Approach. Family history begins with a narrative. It begins with a story. And over time, I have discovered that oral history that is passed down from word of mouth, from generation to another generation, is very, very vital. Because with oral history, you're able to capture the experiences of relatives who have experience, life events, eyewitness accounts of experiences and things that they have seen in their lifetimes, and they can share with you what they know about your ancestry, your relatives, your grandparents, great uncles, great aunts, and even parents. And so oral history is the beginning, according to my view, of family history. And oral history, although it's important, some oral history has to be corroborated. And so we have to get primary sources. And so primary sources are basically artifacts, photographs, census records, diaries, and other written data that will supplement or confirm oral accounts about our family history. Then family history evolved into writing. And so when we look at family history, we have the oral accounts or the oral history, we have the primary sources or the written histories, but we need to put it in writing. And so it's important that as we learn about our family history, we begin to write our family history. And so in writing our family history, we begin with a narrative. And writing narratives are fairly simple. When you plan a narrative, you basically tell a story, you chart key scenes, you enrich the narrative with details, and you prepare to draft. It's kind of like when we go and we recollect about our English classes, and we remember when we had to write paragraphs and essays. And so the process is still the same in writing a narrative. And basically in writing a narrative, you're telling your story or a story. But there is more than meets the eye in a narrative. Although a narrative is a story, but there are the intricate details in the narrative that we need to know. And how do we know or assess the intricate details? We do that by making inferences, drawing conclusions, generalizations, putting the details in proper context to clarify. And so there are so many things in a narrative that needs to be brought out. And so in approaching a narrative, you have the story, you have the narrative, but we need to bring the story out. And so how do we do that? And when I was writing my first book, I kind of struggled with bringing the stories out. I had the stories, but I needed an approach to do that. And so in grad school, I learned about the different qualitative approaches. And one of those qualitative approaches that I learned was the narrative inquiry. And so the narrative inquiry is an approach in which stories are analyzed to create meanings through context. And so in the narrative inquiry, we're looking at the stories and we're analyzing those stories to create meanings. And so it's important that when we write our family history, that we gather the stories, that we understand that those stories have meanings and those meanings have context. And that is the general definition of the narrative inquiry. And so the narrative inquiry has two components, two simple components: the narrative essay basically means an actual story, and the narrative analysis, which is a written reflection of the narrative essay. So there are two components: the narrative essay, which is the story itself, and the narrative analysis, which is the written reflection. And so during this presentation, we're going to go into the bulk of the narrative inquiry approach. And so this section, I will explain the tools and examples of narrative inquiry. There are 3 templates of narrative inquiry that I will elaborate on, and I will use examples from my award-winning book, The Thompson Family: Untold Stories from the Past from 1830 to 1960, and will show a story and an analysis that provides an example of the narrative inquiry. And so when we think of templates, we think of how to organize information. And when you're writing family history or you're writing stories, it's very important to organize the information. So how do we do that? We do that by employing graphic organizers. And graphic organizers and templates are very synonymous. Even in schools, students are encouraged to use graphic organizers. English teachers, social studies teachers, science teachers, they use graphic organizers to capture information about a particular topic. And so it's the same with writing your family history using the narrative inquiry approach. And so there are 2 templates of the narrative inquiry approach focused on the narrative essay, the biography writing template. And a biography writing template captures information about an individual life. And many family histories that are published mainly are biographies and historical figures such as Nelson Mandela. And this is an example of a narrative essay biography writing template. And I'm going to go through this template. This template here, if you look at individual name, you will write the individual that you're going to write about. That individual could be a family member, a mother, father, grandfather, a cousin. And on the template, there are directions on how to use it. And so I'm going to read these directions because these directions are very, very important. You want to add supporting information, facts or details under each category. And these are the categories: the individual early life, the individual later life, and fill out the template. And in this template, feel free to use as much space as needed on the Word document, or use content from the template to create a manual one for yourself. You could use primary sources, census records, obituaries, newspaper articles, including secondary sources, books as an aid. And this is key. You want to use the content in the categories to write your draft. And so these directions are pretty much the same throughout the other templates as well. But the difference is the tips. And so when you're writing your biography about your relative, these tips are very, very important to include in the categories. You want to research about the person and include all key information on their birth date, years active, death date if not alive, few important things in early life or adult life, interesting facts about the person, family life, reason for the person's fame, and major accomplishments in life. And so these tips are very, very important to help you successfully complete your biography writing template. And this is an example of a narrative essay of a biography. My ancestor, Millage Thompson, a freedman's story. This story is in the book, The Thompson Family, Untold Stories from the Past. And as you can see, I did the research, looking at his life, bringing the research together to write this essay. And so you can see the date, his birthday. He was born on October the 5th, 1830. I mentioned places. His wife was sold at a slave auction in Charleston, South Carolina. And then I include other details, his children, both of his wives, and to the right, his death date. He died on January the 8th, 1903. So this is an example of a biography using the template as an aid to write this biography. Some family histories do not necessarily always use biographies. In fact, I have found that family history can be brought out by writing about specific family related events. And so family related events include tragedies, notable incidents, or notable life events. And give you an example, a family reunion is a family related event that you could write about. And so a family related event, the tips basically answering questions. And this is very, very important because these questions are journalistic questions, questions that journals, newspaper correspondents use. And so when you're trying to capture information about a family related event, these are some questions that you want to answer. Who was involved in the event? List the individuals or groups involved. When did the event happen? You want to specify dates. Where did the event happen? You want to specify places. What happened during the event? You want to list key details about the event and specify reasons that led to the event, causes, and outcomes. And so these questions serve as a guide for you to include all key information about a specific family-related event. And again, you want to use your sources. Very, very important. Primary sources, secondary sources. And you also want to make sure that you use the key information from the questions as content to write your rough draft. Also, I forgot to mention that in the last slide, that you could use the content from your biography writing template to write your rough draft for your essay. So you have a choice. You could go either way. You could either write biographies about your family members, or you could write family-related events that took place in your family, or a combination of both, whatever you decide. And so this is an example of a family-related event in the book. The title, The Vigilante Exploits of Murray Quarterbaum, is a very interesting story about how Murray was able to escape prison. But it also mentioned about the details that involve his altercation with Chief Luke Rogers. And as you can see, in this story, again, I'm mentioning dates, mentioning characters who were involved, the individuals who were a part of the event. And so again, it's very important that you look at those questions in your template and answer those questions by using the sources that you have about that specific family-related event. And so the narrative analysis, we already covered the narrative essays, the biographies, and the family-related events. And so the narrative analysis, you want to create meanings from these stories. And so it's very, very important that we use a template to do that. And so the best template to analyze your narratives is the double entry journal. And the double entry journal template is used to analyze text from the narrative essays. The template enables you to record your responses to the narrative essays while reading. And so being an active reader, you want to make sure that you are thinking about what you're reading. And it's important to record your responses while you're thinking about what you're reading. And so this template serves that purpose. And the purpose of the template serves as content to write your narrative analysis. And so this is an example of a double entry journal template. These tips here are very, very important, and I'm going to explain these tips. The first tip, content from the text. In your narrative essay, you can select a passage, interesting language, quotation from the individual, key event, critical fact, main idea, or a problem or conflict from the text of your narrative essays. And so when we talk about content from the text, we're talking about the information from your stories, your narrative essays. And you have the freedom to select any text within your essay. Connection. Connection is optional, but you also want to identify the connections from the text. Okay, and so you can identify if the connection from the text is historical, social, cultural, personal, current, etc. You use your primary sources, including secondary sources, as an aid. And so that's very, very important, because again, when you talk about narrative analysis, we're talking about using those stories to create meanings. And you create meanings through context, and you identify context by identifying connections. And the third and the most important tip is reflection. Reflection requires you to reflect from selected quotes from the text on a personal level based on your opinions, thoughts, and experiences. Again, use your primary sources, including secondary sources, as an aid. And this point that I want to stress, use the responses from your reflection as content to write your narrative analysis. And so I'm going to share with you an example of what I've done with this story, Milledge Thompson. I took the text from the narrative essay, and this is the text here. And the context or the connection, it was a personal connection. And the reason why it's a personal connection, because it was my personal opinion about the text from the essay. And that personal opinion, I wrote a reflection. And so this is the reflection here. And so I'm going to read briefly the reflection. Milledge Thompson was one of the many former slaves who were able to obtain their freedom. It is not known on how he was able to obtain his freedom, but what is known that an opportunity was afforded to him to obtain it. So as you can see, the reflection is different from the narrative essay. And so the narrative essay basically is the story, but the narrative analysis, the reflection part, is what it is. I'm reflecting based on what I have read, using the text as a basis to do that, using my opinions, my thoughts, and experiences. Here's another example. The text, later in life, Laura was sold at a slave auction in Charleston, South Carolina, to a slave owner around the Horry County area. And so this, to me, is a historical connection. And the reflection is Milledge, like other freedmen, secured the freedom of their families. And many slaves were able to purchase their own freedom like Milledge, and they were able to secure the freedom of their families and loved ones. He was quite aware of the malevolent realities of slavery and the practice of separating enslaved families. And so that is an historical fact, because as we know, when we study slavery, families were separated. And so using secondary sources to study about slavery and the practices of slavery during the time enabled me to write this reflection. And on the template, there are spaces to include information. And so this is an example of a narrative analysis. Notice the title from Milledge Thompson, A Freedman's Story, because you want to make sure that when the reader or yourself reading the narrative analysis, it has to connect to the essay. And so the narrative analysis the way it's written is different from the narrative essay. I'm doing a reflection. And so the presentation handouts, all the templates will be shared with participants. So everything that I have went over will be shared with you. And so after you complete your templates, you could begin writing your drafts. And this is an interesting quote here. The purpose of the first draft is not to get it right, but to get it written. And so don't worry about getting your drafts perfected at first, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to always edit and revise. But you want to use those templates as a basis to begin writing your drafts. And so we're going to go into how to do that. And so strategies and tips. After completing your templates, you can begin writing your rough drafts of your narrative essays and analysis. It's very important to use the content in the templates to write your rough drafts. For your rough drafts, it is suggested that you have a notebook, a composition book, or a notebook paper to write your rough drafts. Divide your notebook or composition book into two sections, a narrative essays and narrative analysis. You can use sticky notes to divide sections or use a binder with section dividers to organize your notebook paper. What system works for you? So it's very important that you begin to organize your writing. Continuation of strategies and tips. Very important to include the titles of each narrative essay. For narrative analysis, it is recommended that you use the same title from the narrative essay, but begin with the word "from" to signify that the narrative analysis is a reflection of that specific narrative essay. So this is an example, the narrative essay title, Milledge Thompson, A Freeman Story. But the narrative analysis title is From Milledge Thompson, A Freeman Story. So there is a distinction. The essay title is the story itself. The analysis title is the story itself, but from. And so basically, like I mentioned, it signifies that the narrative analysis is a reflection of the essay, Milledge Thompson, A Freeman Story. A continuation of strategies and tips. In writing your narrative essays and analysis, it is suggested that you use third-person point of view or integrate first or third person's point of view, mainly third-person point of view, he, she, there, they. First person is basically I, and there is a link that you could go to that will provide you with strategies and tips and the pronouns to use third person and first person points of view. After writing your rough drafts, type your rough drafts into your Word document, whether you have Microsoft Word or Google Word, and save. And so it's important that you save your work as well, because these drafts that you save will be your final drafts and that will give you the content to begin to publish your book. And so I will also encourage you to purchase my book, The Thompson Family: Untold Stories from the Past, 1830 to 1960, which is an exemplar of the narrative inquiry approach. It's very important as you involve in writing family history that you want to see what others have done to gain some ideas, so you could use those ideas into writing your family history. And so in the book, there are two chapters, two main chapters, the narrative essay, which include the stories, and narrative analysis that analyze the stories. And you saw examples of that with the story Millage Thompson. And so you could purchase the book on my website, renaissancepubllc.com, and the price is $25. I'm also going to be working on a new session, which will be a continuation of this presentation, called Publishing Your Narrative Inquiry into a Book, and that will be coming soon. And in the new session is going to have information, and I'm going to walk you through how to publish your narrative inquiry into a book, and use my book, The Thompson Family: Untold Stories from the Past, as an example. And so again, you want to make sure that you are organizing your writing and saving your work. Is very, very important, because the draft is the main content to write your book. I will also encourage you to participate in other seminars, webinars that focus on African American genealogy. There are some webinars that are coming up. Steve Tuttle, his webinar focuses on sources at the South Carolina Department of Archives and History, many primary sources that can help you write your biographies and family related events, also help you with your narrative analysis, primary sources, beginner strategies for African American genealogy with my good friend, Ms. Robin Foster. Very important webinar to participate in. How I Find My Enslaved Ancestor with Ms. Karen Strickland. Very important as well. And other webinars as well. We live in the upstate. Mr. Quintel Walker, he's going to be sharing genealogy research strategy sources in the upstate. And on October the 19th, 2022, I will be doing another webinar, Writing Family History, the Narrative History Approach. And so these webinars are very, very important, because you want to learn, you want to grow, and you also want to gather sources, primary sources, and utilize research strategies to begin writing your family history. So I encourage you to participate in these webinars. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you for attending. And at this time, I will entertain questions.
Good afternoon, Avery Dames from South Carolina State University. How you doing today, sir?
Good afternoon, Avery. How you doing? My alma mater, Bulldogs, yes.
Yeah, go Bulldogs. Question, in your research of your family, have you run into situations of family members' names changing, like on census records? Their surnames.
Surname, yes. In fact, give an example, Kitchens. My third great grandmother, Martha Kitchens, C.Y. Ellison. The Kitchens name, how she spelled it, was Kitchings, Kitchens with ing. But there are some Kitchens relatives spell their surnames Kitchens, like an actual kitchen, Kitchens. And so there is a confusion there in some cases. And one thing about surnames, it depended on the freedmen at the time after the Civil War. Some of the freedmen who were Kitchens actually dropped the ings and added the CHENS in the Kitchens to distinguish their identity from the slave owner. You even have last surnames like Corbett's, the Corbett family around Orangeburg County. Some of their names are spelled Corbett. Some of them spell their name Corbitt. And remember talking to some of the old Corbett's, they will say, well, we're not like the Corbett's with the E, we're the Corbett's with the I. And one of the Corbett's, old Corbett's would say to me, she told me this a long time ago, that his grandfather used the I, which signifies independence, from the slave master who owned him, which spelled his last name Corbett. And so you really have to look at those surnames carefully. And it is not cookie cutter. You really have to gather the relevant information to see how you relate it, if you have the same surname or those surnames are different. And then you may have to talk to some family members who could share some light as well.
Okay, yeah, because the situation I have in researching my family, my last name is Daniels, and speaking to my father before he passed away, I got down to his grandfather's father, and I told him about a name that I ran across. He said, yeah, I remember hearing that name, I guess as a youth or whatever. Right. So going through census records, the man's name was Smart Daniels, but somehow or another, his name is also connected to Daniel Smart. It got flipped around some sort of way. So I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate that. And, it's kind of confusing at this point.
Yeah, it is. And I see what you're going through, because one thing about these surnames, particularly these census records, some of these surnames are misspelled, and you have some of these surnames are what they are for a reason. Like you take C. Wright. My mother's maiden name, she spelled it Sewright. But some of the census records may spell it Seeright or Searight. And then I found out down the line with connecting with other Seawright relatives, some of them are very adamant by spelling their surname Searight. And so there's a confusion there. But there are strategies and resources, and perhaps your question to your answer could be answered by other folks who are going to be doing the webinars throughout this series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Curry, we had another question from Petri in the chat. Will this also be helpful for families that may include Native American ancestry along with African American ancestry?
Oh, absolutely. This session is for everybody. The main purpose of this session is to give you tools and strategies so you can begin writing your family history. And so I didn't go into specific sources like census records or obituaries in the presentation because I wanted to focus on the writing process. But once you acquire the sources, because you got to have the appropriate sources to begin writing, then you could use the strategies and tools that I shared with you to begin writing your family history. So it doesn't matter if you're a descendant of African descent, European, Native American. This presentation is for everyone who is interested in writing their own family history. I see another question by Christina Griswold.
I see that Christina Griswold asked, what is a good number of primary sources that should I aim to use?
That's a great question. It depends on how far you want to go. One thing about primary sources, and you want to have a general understanding of what they are. When we talk about primary sources, we're talking about obituaries, we're talking about newspaper articles, we're talking about diaries, anything that is written that connects to your family history is a primary source. And so it depends on where the evidence takes you. You could go, like I said, you can go as far as you want, but you want to make sure that your primary sources are credible, and you want to organize your primary sources as well. There's different circumstances and situations that you encounter in acquiring primary sources. And that depends on the topic, depends on the individual that you're writing about. It depends on the family related event, but they are out there, and you want to make sure that you are able to access those primary sources and know what they are specifically, so you can use them to write your family history.
Dr. Curry, Doug asked a question. He said, in your session on publishing, will you be talking about pros and cons of various online publishers?
Yes, I will. I would definitely explore that, because the publishing aspect of writing is totally different for what I discussed, because you definitely want to look at a framework, how you're going to organize your book, and I'm going to share some strategies and tips on how to do that. And you also want to look at some ideas that you have for writing your book as well. And so I'm going to be sharing some tips and strategies that I've used to publish my family history book. But feel free to also consult other sources as well. I've learned in the publishing industry that no person is an island. No one man is an island, as they say. And so you definitely want to consult other sources and read about the works from other authors that you're interested in, and get some ideas from their works as well.
Y'all are asking some great questions. Does anyone else have one or two last questions?
Hello, my name is Sylvia. I was wondering if your second book about the Seawright family, is that written in narrative form as well?
That is written in the narrative history, mainly biographies of relatives. So in the C. Wright Ellison book, it includes stories of relatives that I've done research on, that I've gathered information about from oral and primary sources. And the appendix section also includes documents, primary source documents, pictures and places that connects with the individuals in the book.
Hello, my name is Myra, and I have a question regarding your research. If you encountered or were you able to access family members born outside of the United States? I'll give you my situation. My people are from St. Helena's Island in South Carolina. And with my grandfather, who spoke several languages, on some of his documentation, it says that his father was from Africa and his grandmother was from Mexico, but we can't find any documentation or names for them. And when I tried to research in South Carolina because of a fire, they told me I have to go somewhere else to access the records. What happens when you hit a wall or when you've hit a wall in research?
That's a great question. About your situation, African research is an emerging topic in African American genealogy. There are many organizations, several organizations out there that will help you go beyond the brick wall that you have described. I'm connected with the International African American Museum, which is currently being built in Charleston. I know they've done some research on African history, and I'm assuming that they have some resources and experts available that can help you documenting your African ancestry, because it's very, very difficult. And I'm finding that out too, because when you're talking about African ancestry, you know, Africa itself is a melting pot. You're talking about thousands of cultures and thousands of languages, and you know, the countries, they have different rules and regulations on how to access information about Africa, those African countries specifically. But I encourage you to reach out to the International African American Museum. I have my contact information that I will share with you, and I can get you connected with them, and perhaps they will get you in contact with the right people. With my family history, I have found my African ancestry is in the book. My ancestor, Lavinia Corley Thompson, she told her enslaved experience to her grandchildren. And she said that her mother, Phyllis Corley, was brought from Africa here on a boat. She was brought here as a slave. And so that enslaved narrative by my ancestor is in the book. And when I read that part of that narrative, actually it's the first few sentences, I immediately connected that, okay, I am connected to an ancestor who was from Africa, who was a part of the Middle Passage. And I know her name because on my ancestor Levian death certificate, she knew her parents. And that's a rarity too, because some slaves didn't even know who their parents were. Okay, and you see some death certificates of former slaves who didn't know their parents. It would be a blank, don't know, initials, a DK. But I was able to trace my African lineage by identifying my ancestor Phyllis Corley, who came over here through the Middle Passage. But that's my experience. But to help you, I think the International African American Museum could provide the resources and the experts you need.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Curry, Brenda Kanziter. Miss Kanziter's writing a book. You contact us every once in a while, Miss Kanziter. She asks, how much information do you need to start? Just the basics? Does it need to require long, drawn out stories?
That's a great question. Just the basics. Like my good friend, Miss Robin Foster, who's here, she always would say, start from where you are. Start from what you know. Look around. That's the best advice that I could give you, because you don't want to write a story that is not factual. It won't come out right. It's not authentic. But I would say my best advice is to start with the basics, use the resources that I have provided during this presentation, and feel free to consult other resources as well. But it doesn't need to be long drawn out. It's up to you, it's your discretion. But you want to have enough information so it will be an actual story, so you can actually analyze the story to create meanings, if you decide to use the narrative inquiry approach. And just want to add to that too, in also writing stories, you can use pictures to be a part of your stories, primary sources, obituaries. Use the sources that you have to bring out the stories.
I know I'll be able to use this with my own family history. So I'm going to start
you.
reorganizing my papers. Would you like for me to send out the handout after the fact, or do you want to upload it now? I'm glad to send out to everybody afterwards, whichever you like.
We have some time. I could upload it, or do I have some time?
Sure, if everybody else is.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Let me stop share here. And
If it's okay, I'll put up my information. If anybody ever has a question
okay.
that y'all want to follow up with folks from my library. Let's see if I can get this pulled up.
Let's see.
Try this again.
Okay. Can everybody see the template?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this template here is the narrative analysis double entry journal template. The title, Writing Your Family History, and the title, the narrative essay. You want to make sure that you write the title, because the title signifies what you will be analyzing, the story, and the directions, the tips, and the columns, which includes the categories. And again, feel free to use as much space as needed, or use the content on the Word document to create a manual one for yourself. You know, some of y'all may say, well, I'd rather do it manually, depending on the information. And so you could use this Word template to expand your information as well. So this is the double entry journal template. The second template I'm going to show you is the family related events template here. The directions, the tips. The tips are very, very important because they will help you answer the questions. This is the family related events template. And the last template is the biography writing template. The directions, the individual name, you want to write the name of the individual that you're going to do research about. And the categories, individual early life and individual later life. And so those are the templates for the narrative inquiry. And just want to also stress with the narrative inquiry, there are two templates, the narrative essays, the biography writing template and the family related event template. So you have a choice. If you want to write a biography about a family member, use the biography writing template. If you want to write about this event, use the family related event template. And the narrative analysis, the double entry journal template can be used to analyze your narrative essays, whether it's a biography or a family related event. Okay. And like I said, I'll share all of the handouts with everyone. And also can everyone see my PowerPoint slide?
Oops, sorry.
There we go. All right. This is a slide about my company, Renaissance Publications, LLC. The founder is yours truly. My website, www.renaissancepubllc.com. You can also contact me through email. That is Renaissance Publications LLC@gmail.com. I'm very active on social media at www.facebook.com/Renaissance Publications. And my contact number is 803-404-2117.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Curry. That was wonderful. I know I learned a lot, and it sounds like with the great questions, everybody else did too. So I really appreciate your talk today. And anybody that would like to follow up, I tried to put my information in there. My name is Virginia Pierce at the State Library, and you can always follow up with me and my reference department at the State Library, and we'd be glad to help you get started, answer some questions, and tell you who else is out there in the library and archives around the state that will be able to help you. And Dr. Curry mentioned this, our next talk is on June 8th with archivist Steve Tuttle. He has worked at the state archives for a very long time, and he is going to give a talk on sources on African-American genealogy research that you can use. And we hope you join us on that day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, thank you all to the participants. I appreciate taking the time to listen to my presentation this afternoon. And again, feel free to contact me. Again, my name of my company, Renaissance Publications, LLC. My website is www.renaissancepubllc.com. You could email me at renaissancepublications.llc@gmail.com. And you can follow me on social media at www.facebook/Renaissance Publications LLC. And my contact number is area code 803-404-2117. And I will be sharing those handouts with everyone and other resources that can help you to begin writing your family history.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we answer any other questions that y'all might have?
No, I'd just like to say that I enjoyed the webinar today, Dr. Curry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great. I can stick around for another minute or two if any shy folks want to ask questions at the end.
Yeah. I see Miss Drayton there. How you doing, Miss Drayton? She ain't listening.
She didn't hear you.
Right.
I'm glad she came. She told me she didn't get the link to join today. So I was like, oh my gosh, I hope Miss Drayton wasn't the only person. So I sent it out again
That's right.
just in case. So I'm glad she joined. It worked
That's
out
right.
pretty well.
That's right. Well, again, thank you all, and looking forward to seeing everybody during the webinars, and we'll be back here in October.
Wonderful. Have a great day, Dr. Curry. Thanks, Ms.
Have a
Foster,
great-
and everybody
have a
else that
wonderful
came.
day.
It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. I have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.